Hello, Errant Squire. Thank you for joining in for the French viewers.
Hey, yeah, I'm welcome to be here. I'm glad to be here.
It's a great pleasure for us. So for the French viewers who don't know you, you get a really famous YouTube and Twitch TV.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, we're trying. We're in a building year. We're in a couple of building years right now.
The most famous cast for you is deck building with Errant Squire.
That's correct.
So you made a cast with guest, and you made, if I'm not wrong, 2 or 3 by months.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Deck Building with the Squire is a show where I focus on fixing the community's decks. So they send me in decks, although I haven't seen that many lately, so you guys are always welcome to send me a deck, and I will fix it and talk about it on the show. Unfortunately, my French is not so good, and it was never actually that good to begin with, so I'll have to do it in English. But I will fix the deck, and I will post it. That takes about the last 30 minutes of the show, and then the first 30 minutes of the show I focus on either interviewing someone and talking about HEX news and that type of thing. So I go out and I look for content providers a lot like yourself. You are going by the moniker of Mr. Rollup, so
yeah.
Of course you've been invited on the show. You're a little bit shy because of your English, but I think your English is perfectly fine to come on, really,
so
honestly.
I will come with pleasure.
All right, sweet.
I got a new idea of a tricky deck. I'm sure you will be pleased to see it. I try to help the community. Curve mana is sometimes a great problem for new player. So, do you get good advice for a beginner in deck building? You know, with resource or maybe threshold.
So one of the first things that I was shown as a young, we'll say Magic player, although that's become a dirty word lately because of the lawsuit and everything, was visually looking at my curve. And when I say that, it means that we basically make stacks of a converted, in Magic, of converted Magic mana cost. In this game, we don't have to worry about converted mana cost. It's just cost. The number is what it is. So that's nice for us. But we still basically, what you're going to do is, like if we're going to make an aggro deck, a lot of times we're going to count things out. Like we'll make a column for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we're going to put the cards that are those costs in the column, and then that should visually make a curve that we should be able to see in front of us, and that will tell us kind of like how things are going and where our resources should sit. So like if our curve pushes most of our cards into like the 1 and 2 range, we can go with a low curve of 23 or less shards. And that takes some experience to feel out exactly where you feel like you can go and how far you can push it. But if you're going with something with a higher curve in the 4, 5, 6 range, you're probably going to want, you know, upwards of 24 to 26 shards, because you need to draw more shards, you know, per hand, you know, type of thing, or per each draw. And there's also some ratios and some other things you can look at with that.
Yeah, and you need to get a good curve, like a bell.
Right. Well, it's one of those things where I like having a good curve because it makes the deck consistent, but it's not always something that you completely need, because I have seen people build decks where they've kind of ignored the curve because they want to have certain power cards in there. It's just more advantageous for them to have that power in there, even though they're going to have clunky hands or bad, poor draws sometimes. It just outweighs, you know, just the fact that they have certain powerful cards that as long as they get to play those, they can take over the game anyways. But that does mean that they're going to give up a certain percentage of losses by not actually getting to play cards. They'll just sit there and they'll either not draw enough shards, or they'll draw too many shards, or things like that can happen. So it's very much a give and take of different things.
Yeah, but it's a specialized deck. If you're a beginner and you build an average deck, you want to have something which is regular. and simple to play, not like function is shrewd manipulation deck. It's not something for
that's a lot of combo.
So some decks are so much specialized they don't use the general rules, but these rules are good if you're a beginner.
Right. And I'm sure that you've read some of the the typical players, like what they want to get out of the game, because, like, for instance, I am more of a Johnny player, but also a Spike player. Spikes will win at any cost, so they'll just figure out what the best deck is and what's got the best percentages. They don't care about actually building decks a lot of times, whereas your Johnny player is the person that's building decks all the time. They're the person that loves to have combos. A Johnny player is happy when it is that he walks away from a tournament and gets his combo off, not actually, winning. He doesn't have to win a game all night, and he'll feel good if at least he got his combo off once a night. And then, of course, there's the Timmy player, which is a lot of times kind of like relegated to the new player, but what they want is big cards with big effects. So that's what they're looking for, is like they'll see a very large dragon and just say, oh, this is a great dragon, without thinking about,
6/6 is awesome.
Hey, how can I actually play this dragon and viably win the game? And that doesn't mean that Timmy players can't win. It just means that sometimes they value things differently than like a Spike player or a Johnny player.
Yeah, and when you're deck building, you're also considering the big card, like you said. If I take X, for example, you will face extension and control Sapphire like Gralk.
Right. We know the big three right now are basically Mono Sapphire, Tempo, which is what I played in the last tournament. We've got Blood Diamond Control, which is very popular just because it plays such very powerful cards in it, although it only draws one card a turn depending on which version you're playing. We had the 2-pack which came out, and I think that one's pretty good too, but I wouldn't put it in the big three. The other one I would put in the big three is the Ruby Sapphire, what is it called? Gore Feast deck, yeah, because it's very accessible, because a lot of the cards are in the starter deck. Given the Gore Feast is in there, you just really need to get your Falconer and Cerulean Mirror Knights, and that deck is very easy to get to, and it's very much a tier 1 deck. So I think that's much more of a, I think that's still like a threat for all the other decks.
Yeah. In other games like Magic or Duel of Champions, there is always a deck who is accessible to the beginner and is 50-50. You can win versus any deck, but you can lose versus any deck. And I feel it's pretty healthy for the meta. That means even if you get a really big deck like Blood Diamond Control,
it's the most expensive deck right now. Blood Diamond Control is the most expensive deck.
Yeah, but they can lose if a Gore Fist. Sometimes they can kill you pretty easily in turn 4. And, and if you're starting...
if you don't draw your Extinction and you can't sweep, or if you don't draw 2 Blood Shards, you're not in a good shape.
And if Ruby are starting, when his turn 4 come, you're still in your turn 3. So even if you get Extinction in hand, you can't play it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you didn't win the coin toss, that could also work against you, for sure.
Okay, we will just move on. You talked about the second set, Shattered Destiny, and we get really good news recently. It comes out the 2 December.
32nd of December or November rather, or whatever. 32nd November.
It was an age joke for the guy who worried for the VIP tournament.
Right.
So I'm sure you're really excited about the second set, no?
Well, yeah. I mean, I actually did get to play with it at Gen Con, so it seems like they're giving some love to the Shin Hair, which is everyone's going to be happy about. I hope that we can at least get a tier 2 Shin Hair deck in the meta. I hope that would be very, I think that would be very healthy, and that would also make it more inclusive for people, because people really want Shin Hair and Wild in general to do well. Right now, the only Wild deck is the 2-packed deck, and it's still like in blood. I mean, most of the decks that are out there, like
really
2 of them,
Wild Shard.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Wild. Like it's still a control deck basically, it dips into Wild for acceleration and a couple of troops, which are just just big bodies, which are basically like what the control strategy is to play really big bodies really late. But with the aggro is going to pick up a lot because we're just getting so many things that like get more powerful when we get shards, especially in the robots. Hopefully there'll be a dwarf deck that's at least a tier 2. I'm not seeing the plans as good as I thought that I hope that they would be. They're just not fast enough, and I still feel like like for instance the plans to make the 5/5 could have easily have put them into play at least unexhausted. Was it Warhulk? The Warhulk plans, I don't know why maybe they just felt like that was a decision they made for draft. It comes into play exhausted. That's why. But I just feel like they could have fixed that by just having it come into play unexhausted. Although it makes it a lot like the incantations or like Soul Marble. When those things come into play, they can attack right away too because the card had already been in play and it's the same card. So it's if you were to level a Soul Marble up all in one turn, it shouldn't be able to attack because it came into play the same turn because it's the same card. But otherwise, and that goes for the incantations as well. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where I feel like dwarves need some love in the plans department. Yeah, I think that will be very helpful for them.
They will be just some fun cards, like Shinare. Shinare are really great, but I don't see someday a tier 1 deck with Shinare.
Well, no, not right now. And the biggest problem, has always been that battle hoppers are just not the greatest unless you can buff them. And then sometimes you're just asking too much. Like in an open board state, when I'm making battle hoppers, it's like, well, they just block for me. That's all they do. Unless I can buff them. And if my buff gets countered or something else happens, then that's a problem. And the best card to buff them with was Oath of Valor. And unfortunately, that's one where I don't feel like it's scripted properly because it's not supposed to target. It says name a card, but it still targets the card, the battle hopper. And if they kill, kill in response, then your oath goes into play, and then the battle hopper dies, and then the oath has no target, and so then it just sits on the board with no target and doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But they may have fixed that because, for instance, things don't work like they do in other card games. Like if I bounce a Soul Marble and someone's putting counters on it, those counters still go on it. So maybe even if you kill the battle hopper, even if it's in the graveyard, maybe Oath will still target it. Okay. I don't know. Things work a lot differently in a lot of ways. That's one example. The other example, of course, is crush damage over troops that don't take damage. The crush doesn't go over because it gets all absorbed. That doesn't work that way in other card games that have that type of mechanic. Like Magic. But there are so the crush mechanic has been in plenty of other games.
Yeah, we get lots of spoiler of the set 2. We saw lots of legendary card. Do you get a favorite in the spoiler we see?
Ooh, do I have a favorite legendary?
Oh, no, not just a favorite, but a couple of cards you do.
Right, that I picked out. So I just saw that Filk Ape. I know that thing is pretty awesome. I like the alternate art on it. I don't know if you saw that. That's going to be for... Is it going to be this month? No, it's going to be the release tournament. Yeah. It's going to be for the Filk Ape. So the Filk Ape, so it's a 5-cost, 2 wild threshold, 4/5, and it says at the end of your turn, revert all troops, and that just screams Johnny to me. Although it doesn't seem to work very well with other wild things. Like we have Wild Root Dancer is a classic. I mean, he's on the pack of cards. And then you've got a new guy that's a 4/4, and every time you get a charge, he can give +2/+2 to any troop, even himself. I'm not sure if that's going to stay that way, but that's how it was working at Gen Con. I think that they're going to change it so he won't be able to buff himself. He'll be a lot like Wild Root Dancer. But he's a bigger body, too, so he's a lot harder to deal with than Wild Root Dancer. But, we haven't even seen Wild Root Dancers. He doesn't even really get played anymore.
You get any prediction for the new meta, set 2 meta, or it will be the same color with more powerful cards?
Right now, I'm hoping that we're going to see some charge deck out there. There's going to be a charge deck for sure. Whether it actually makes it into that tier 1 slot is going to depend on how much damage it can push through, how quickly. It may be a dwarf charge deck with Sapphire, maybe, because we've got the 1-drop in dwarves. That's a 3/4 that you need to have like 4 troops in play for it to block or attack. But that seems like a very strong card to me. And because you're in Sapphire, you can counter the Extinction. Hopefully, we're going to see something in Wild that will be able to, it either can die and come back from Extinction, or it just has something a lot like Wrathwood Colossus at a lower level, a lower cost that we can, just maintain some sort of board state in Wild. Or something in Bunnies. Bunnies are getting another buff, which is nice, so there's a chance that we can see a tier 2 Bunnies deck. But yeah, like right now, there's just so much strong stuff in the mono Wild. The mono Sapphire is just so strong, and then you've got the Blood Diamond control, which is just going to get better. And then, of course, you've got the Gore Feast deck as well. There's a chance that we may see a Servant deck now, but I'm not sure what that would look like. If it's going to go into Ruby is very likely. Servant needs 20 different types of cards in the deck. And now that we have more cards to choose from, we can maybe make something that's going to be more consistent. Consistency is very much a problem with that deck. So, yeah. We also have some interesting things, like Draft is going to be much different now, too.
Yeah. Lots of new cards to analyze.
Mono Ruby is probably going to make a resurgence, I think. Mono Ruby has always been strong, and we saw that in one of the early tournaments, everybody ran it except for like 2 people in the top 8, and I was not one of them, so I died to it very quickly. But Mono Ruby's always been very strong. That was the tournament where the HEX CCG Pro tournament where we had to ban the Inquisitor because it was broken. Yeah. So when Inquisitor is gone, then Mono Ruby can dominate pretty hard.
And it was my next question. It's nice for you. Do you think we could see like hyper aggro deck? A deck who can kill you in the turn 4. We've got some cards like Ridge Raider. It's a deck who costs 1, a 1/1 who costs 1, and if you get an Orc, it's a +1/+1. It's a 2/2. If you put, like a Fang of the Mountain God, Savage Raider, do you think you can make a deck with can kill the opponent in turn 4 or 5, and after, if you didn't, just make a burn to the ground or some damage?
Right, yeah, I mean, that's very possible. With something like that, a lot of times in Mono Ruby, I think you're going to want to main deck that Witch, I forget what it is, Emberspire Witch, I believe. So that way no one can gain life. The biggest problem when you're playing any type of Mono Ruby or classically like a burn deck is if your opponent life gains through your damage and then somehow stabilizes, you're in trouble. So you really want to actually be able to kill them. You want to have them below 10 on turn 3. Yeah, I think that's where you really want to be at.
It's a bit like Gorefist. It's an all-in deck, and
right.
I don't know if you saw that card. There is a Psycho Anarchist. It's a 2/2 for 2 who gets speed, and you and your opponent draw a card, so you can pull more.
Yeah, I've played with him.
Pull more.
It gives you gas, but it gives your opponent answers. Yeah. So hopefully either they just don't draw enough shards,
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sorry to you. Just saying, if you're in turn 2 or 3, even if the player gets cards like Inner Conflict, it's 1 spell for 3 cost, and if you get 2 Fang of the Mountain God or Savage Raider, you can really overflow him really quickly.
Oh yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely overwhelm them with that. I'm looking at one that might help out with Wild too, because Wild's very, very weak against the Mono Sapphire, which we've talked about at length, being very the tempo being very dominant. And this is Constantina. She is 2 cost and 2 Wild threshold. She's a 3/2, so she's already a really nice body for the cost. Steadfast, troops you control can't be exhausted by opposing cards and effects. So that means that it shuts down Menacing Grolk, which, you know, if this wild deck is to work, this is what you're going to want, because they're going to need to bounce this card and then play their Grolk, which puts them a lot further behind than just being able to Grolk you on turn 5. Usually when Mono Sapphire gets 5 shards in play, that's when you're really in trouble. And this card makes it so, you know, it's either going to take him a turn, or, you know, there's other things they're going to have to do to play around Constantina, because she can just hit the board so early. So I think that's going to be really good for that low-end mono wild aggro. It looks like she's an elf. This was, again, taken from when we were at Gen Con, so, like, the troops, it just says troop. It doesn't actually give the subtype. So, like, things that were probably orcs, like, we have no idea if they were actually orcs, but they probably were. Stuff like that. Humans, that same thing.
Okay.
There's a small, I would say, okay, if I gave a percentage, I would say maybe 3 to 5% chance that Shinhair could have some sort of an explosive aggro deck. There's a chance. The same chance I would give to dwarves with some of the things I'm seeing from them, with some sort of robots aggro deck.
Okay. So you think,
of course, we know Ruby, much better chance for Ruby to come back. I'd say at least a 20 or 25% that Ruby's going to get something really, a mono Ruby aggro deck, which will be, you know, tier 2 at least.
Okay. So you think the meta is just gonna evolve like now, not a big spike of, you know, powerful combo or thing like that? I will just take an example. There is just a basic card, a common in Mono Sapphire, a Cavern Ward. It's 0/4 for 1, and we can think of this card. If someone puts this in front of the Ruby aggro deck, is pretty screw. So the meta will just evolve slowly, like now.
Well, you know, so here's the deal. Like, it takes people to, like, try things for the meta to actually evolve. And so it depends on when someone's coming into a tournament, if they want to say, you know what, I'm tired of playing the same thing and winning. I want to actually try something new and win with that now. You know, or I think that the meta is doing this every week, and so I think I can beat the meta by doing this. It takes that person, but there are a lot of people that just want to play it safe and just keep playing like blood diamond control. And until it is that those decks start getting beat consistently, you know, sometimes it can be difficult to change opinions. Whereas I might change a couple of cards, but it's still essentially the same deck. Yeah. You know, that's all I'm probably going to do. But in deck building the Squire, like, we do build decks, you know, just to build them. We do it as an exercise to branch out and do other things, and we try to get the basics down so the deck will run properly. Whether it's really good or not, you know, that's a separate issue. But you know, sometimes we do once just for fun.
Yeah, and we are talking about deck building and set 2. Do you get some deck list ready with set 2 card? No, just,
this guy.
Just some idea. Do I
have? I think I have to look through my decks. Hold on. Let's see if I have one. We have built some with some set 2 cards, and I'm trying to look back. Let's see. What did we do for
not the whole deck list, but you know, some idea. Oh yeah, this card will be great in this type.
So here's one. Yeah, we did a Halloween deck, but it's not good at all. It just has some set 2 cards, and it has Isildur is the one of the big cards in here. He's a zombie. He's probably a zombie. He doesn't.
Okay, so you get a fun zombie deck in mind.
Yeah, we made a zombie deck for Halloween.
We talked about hidden combo recently in a few posts for the people who didn't read the article. They said there will be hidden combo. You know, like for the baby Yeti example, if you put 4 of them on the board, something special happen.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're talking about hidden combos. So there's supposed to be some hidden combos in PvE, which I don't know what that means, right? Like, that could just simply mean when certain conditions are met, like something crazy happens, you know, and it's not on the cards at all. Like, that's what that means to me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it could mean. So many things. Hidden combo. I mean, They might as well just say secret sauce. You know, they.
It's one of
what does the secret sauce taste like? You don't know. It's secret.
It's one of the thing I like about a digital card game like X. Say they can change the rules in when you are in PvE. Maybe you get 10 resources at the start of the game, and you can play all the card.
Right.
Something crazy.
You just start off crazy. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things. The rules can change in PvE. I just hope that it's not like the Hearthstone PvE where it's like. It feels like it's a puzzle, yes, but at the same time, it's a puzzle where like I'm just basically trying to face melt my opponent, and then they basically play an unfair board state. So I just need to find the right cards to answer that board state, and if I don't draw those cards in my opening hand, then I automatically lose. Like that's not fun. Like I need to be able to play a game at least to the halfway point and have had a chance to establish something for it to be enjoyable and for me to feel like I'm actually playing a game. Otherwise, you know, all it is just like, it just feels, when you're playing Hearthstone PvE, it just feels very random to me, like, and then once you finish it, it's just very much like, I really don't want to ever do that again.
I got just one final question about PvE. Do you think some type of deck will be dominant in
PvE?
In the few PvE we saw, aggro deck seems more effective, but we don't know. Do you think aggro will be dominant, or like in the meta, combo, control, and aggro can be successful in PvE?
I think that what's most likely going to happen is you're going to need to have your pinch hitting deck. So you're going to need to have your, what's it called, the mercenary deck, which is going to be kind of like reserves, because there's no reserves really. The only reserves you have is if you want to use your mercenary deck for a specific fight, which is a whole new deck.
Yeah.
But I think that
aggro will be more easy for beginner to start in PvE.
I think that, well, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you should be able to hopefully get through, like, you know, the first couple of parts of a dungeon and then come to a stopping point somewhere. But you're going to, additionally, you're going to be gaining PvE cards, which are going to help you through the dungeon portions, and they're PvE only. I really hope that they fix certain things in PvP. Like they talked about relentless corruption being a big problem in PvE.
Yeah.
And you want to do it in an organic way where it doesn't feel like, okay, you just did this because you knew that this was a problem, you know? Like, it's kind of like, oh, well, if you draw the card from your opponent's deck, like, maybe it'll deal, like, 5 damage to you, but you still get to draw it. Well, that's just silly because, like, that's not how it works when I play against a player, and just because we're in PvE, you know, I happen to draw a tentacle and then it deals 5 damage to me. What I don't.
Yeah, it would.
No, that's not a good way to fix it. You know, that's not a good way to fix that. You know, a better way to fix it would be something like if your PvE guy that you're playing against had specific shards that were not open to us, not the 5 shards that we have. That would make sense because now I can play Relentless Corruption and draw that tentacle, but then I can't play it until I play Relentless Corruption and draw his shards, which puts me much further behind. I mean, obviously, like, aggro is probably going to be the first thing people are going to try, and then from there, like, you know, I'll probably go in with control, actually, first.
Oh, okay.
I'll probably just go in with the Tier 1 decks we have now in the meta and just see how they do, you know?
Yeah. Something like tentacle are really strong, and we need removal, and aggro can be weak against some type of cards.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, so you think PvE will be like the PvP meta, open and not just one big type of deck like aggro or control?
Well, there's supposed to be aspects of it where you don't even play like a normal game, like it's going to be more like a puzzle. Where maybe like they'll show you a card and you'll have to answer with a card or something. You know, we really just don't, it's very much a black hole of, we don't know. You know, you've probably seen my interview with, what's his name? Drew Walker.
Yeah, it was really nice.
And I actually spent days writing up questions to ask him, and the questions that we asked him, we actually crossed off about a third of them. That he either couldn't answer or wouldn't answer. So we're lucky that he was nice enough to spend so much time going over all the questions, and he answered them very well. So
yeah, I understand.
It's just going to be one of those things we're going to have to try.
There is still lots of mystery in PvE, so we just have expectation, but lots of answer.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, lots of expectations. So I hope that I do expect that they'll deliver. It would be nice if we got it like as a Christmas gift, like right before like Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, the what do you call it? The arena. I would love to have the arena. You know, maybe like they come out with it, they release it on Christmas Eve or something, or Christmas Day. That's what they should. That's what they should do. Yeah. They should be like, here's a gift to all of you Hex players. And, Merry Christmas. Then like Corey comes in. It's like it's got the Corey is on the splash screen with like he's in the sleigh like he's Santa Claus and like here's some PvE. You said you wanted PvE. Here you go.
It would be awesome. There was something in the forums, and they talk about a special event for Christmas. Maybe the first PvE.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's possible. So yeah, and I'm excited for that. That's another thing that I always loved about playing World of Warcraft was, you know, you had the different times of year and you could do the different events and stuff like that, and that kept you interested in the game.
Okay, so I won't take much of your time. Thank you really much, Errant Squire, for coming in. Donc, for the French viewer, I know you talk a bit in French. Can you say a final word for the French viewer? Like goodbye, you know, in French or something like that?
Je m'appelle Charles. Au revoir.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, Errant Squire.